Okay, welcome to Innovation Night. Tonight we have Dave Rust, class of 2001 at St. Bonaventure. Is also a close friend of mine. Excited to have you on, Dave. Welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Good to be with you, man.
So you have had just a very interesting and intriguing career path. I'd love it if you could, I don't know, start from Bonaventure when you graduated. Give us the spiel. We have maybe 25 minutes to talk through it.
Sounds great, man. So as you mentioned, I'm a 2001 graduate with my undergraduate degree from Bonaventure, journalism, mass comm, and also have a MBA from the school, marketing and management. Bonas was a very formative experience for me for a lot of reasons, but really enjoyed my time at St. Bonaventure. From there, I did a couple things. I went and ran the Francis C. Kelly Study Abroad program in Oxford, England, working with Brother Basil, who was one of my great professors while I was at Bonaventure. So I was doing that during the summers. Then during the school year, I was running after-school programs in the Buffalo Public Schools. And we centered around needs that students might not have gotten during the traditional school day. It could be everything from college preparatory courses to public speaking, to specialized programs for students over at the Old Grover Cleveland, which was a refugee population, or students in the Law Magnet over at Bennett High School in the city of Buffalo. And the programs had some great outcomes. You know, I'd point to one that we were running at Grover Cleveland High School, that we were working with 14 or 15 students every year that were refugees coming from war-torn countries, helping them through the college application process, helping them with their standardized test scores, helping with tutoring. And at the end of each year, they were all going on to college, and there was a great economic return from that, and also a great social return. So I loved the work. And after a couple of years of that, I was recruited over to Erie County to do a couple of things. First, I was in the Department of Social Services running their youth bureau, where we funded about 80 positive development programs. It could be Big Brothers Big Sisters or Boys and Girls Clubs. And then from there, I was promoted up to deputy commissioner in the department with oversight of the juvenile detention facility, runaway homeless youth, placement of youth out of the home, whether it was to a residential treatment or a state facility, for both juvenile justice and kids and child welfare, and oversight of the youth bureau as well. Really enjoyed time in county government. It gave me a really great appreciation for municipal services and the role that county government plays in New York State and our community. And in particular, I learned a lot there. I think I would point to the juvenile detention portfolio. They weren't bad kids, stage of life issues, and we tried to help students with those. And we opened up the facility and brought in mentoring. We brought in connections back to the community. We brought in art therapy. We brought in a community garden. Students were only there for about 10 days. And often it was for things like stealing a shirt or selling something to make some money, because there weren't a lot of opportunities for kids to work in the city of Buffalo. So all that prepared me for the situation that I'm in today. So after a number of years with the county, Say Yes to Education selected Buffalo as their second citywide approach. And Say Yes is known for a couple of things. First is a universal tuition scholarship for every graduate of the public and charter schools in the city. So the entity I run, Say Yes Buffalo, we have that scholarship promise to every kid that graduates a public or charter school. You can earn a certificate, a 2-year degree, or a 4-year degree. And that was backed by wraparound services for kids to help them actually get the scholarship. So exactly what that means is having social service caseworkers in the public school buildings, having a mental health clinic in the public school buildings. We have after-school programming available for students. We screen every student when they enter in pre-K so that they're on track for school readiness. We run Saturday programming called Community Schools, where every Saturday in the city of Buffalo, the schools are open and students can participate in art, music, science, structured recreation time, whether that's learning to swim, taekwondo, structured basketball, or soccer. Last year, about 60,000 people came through the doors for those programs. I'll talk a little bit more about how we've extended those supports, but so it's basically the scholarship backed by supports. And when I was recruited to take the Say Yes job, that's what was compelling to me. It was not just the opportunity for higher ed, but also the services we were looking to put in place for young people. So a couple things I'd note on. I think if I'm an investor in this, I'd want to know where the money comes from and has it worked. So I'll start with some of the data behind the program. And it's hard to move macro systems numbers quickly, but when we launched, the graduation rate in the Buffalo Public Schools was 49%. And that wasn't a one-year blip, Tom. That was a trajectory we had been on for a number of years, sliding to 49%. So today, 7 graduating classes later, it's at 66%. So we've been able to move that number 17 percentage points. By no means are we building statues of ourselves. We have a lot of work left to do. But we've been able to move a number that's clearly going to be better socially and economically in our city. We've been able to move the needle on college matriculation from 57% to 65%. I would note that cities, urban markets similar to Buffalo, the average college matriculation rate, whether that's certificate, 2-year degree or 4-year degree, is only at 52%. So we're well ahead of our peer cities across the country, whether that's Rochester, Cleveland, or Sacramento. And this year we'll have the data back next month actually on students that have completed a certificate, 2-year degree or 4-year degree within 6 years, which is the standard rate now from the National Student Clearinghouse. And we know that we've got a bump there as well too. So across the board, we've been able to move systems numbers. A lot of work left to do, but this has proven, I think, to be a good social and economic return for our city. I can comment on a couple other things too, just about the importance of this work. I think Say Yes Buffalo is about 4 critical things, and that's kids, education, economic development, both personally and for a community, and really an anti-poverty plan. And I think the difference is, well, first of all, this problem exists in every urban market in the country right now. And there's very few working partnerships between a public school system, philanthropy, county government, city government. And we use an approach which it's called a collective impact model, which brings all your partners to the table. So it's more than just school, it's a broader concept. And we're trying to embrace services that schools traditionally don't and can't. In terms of Buffalo, I think we're the right size city for this at that point in time. We had seen the floor fall out in public education, but we're a city of 265,000. From a metro perspective, we're still a top 50 urban market. And it's something that can be replicated in cities around the country. So Buffaloes matter. There's still more Buffaloes, the mid-sized cities, than, New York, Chicago's, and LA's. They're everywhere with the similar problems. And I think the tragedy was great in Buffalo, and everybody was disappointed in what we saw. So, when we launched Say Yes, Buffalo was at an interesting point. We were starting to see the city get rebuilt, and you could see the infrastructure coming back to life. And I look at our work as the intellectual infrastructure. Everybody has potential. Not everybody is given the same opportunity, Tom. And we saw Say Yes Buffalo as an equalizer in terms of giving everybody the same opportunity. And that's been a really beautiful thing in our city. We've been able to demonstrate early success. We've got a lot of work left to do, but you can clearly see that outcomes for people in our city have been improving. And it's, not just a feel-good factor to this, it's a social factor. So, I fully credit our partners in our community for redefining this work and putting their time, their money, and their political will into Say Yes Buffalo. And it's proven to be a working partnership that's rarely seen around the country. And I'd mentioned a lot of the supports we've put in place too. We've gotten a lot of national recognition for this work. Brookings Institution did a deep dive on us. Columbia College did through their Teachers College. And then about 18 months ago, the Gates Foundation came behind Say Yes Buffalo and our partnership. Now, Gates is the biggest philanthropic engine in the world. They're putting extraordinary amounts of money in the massive problems we see across the globe, including health disparities, access to clean drinking water. But one of their focus areas is education in America. And they went on a search for pre-K through college completion partnerships that they were considering best in class. So about a year ago, they named 5 communities with Buffalo at the forefront for what they're calling their P16 exemplar sites. And, we learned a bunch of lessons here, and that was that the services we had in place could not stop senior year in high school. That students were getting onto college campuses and needed access to good tutoring for math and English. Sometimes they needed book support. Sometimes they needed a food pantry. Sometimes they needed a bus pass. And these were all real barriers to college persistence and ultimately completion. So Gates came behind us and is helping us take all the resources we have in the public schools and embed those on college campuses. So we've got success counselors on the campuses of our 5 largest feeder institutions here in Western New York: University at Buffalo Buffalo State, Medaille, Villa Maria, and Erie Community College. We have mental health clinics on those campuses. We're building a transferable data system in the Buffalo Public Schools that will follow students through higher ed completion. We're launching near-peer mentoring, where Say Yes scholars will go back into public high schools and mentor in a group setting students that look like them, that live in their neighborhoods, that are about to go through the process they went through. So, for Gates to come into Buffalo was really important, and it really helped us double down on our work, and it's going to help us move the needle on success long-term. So I guess I'll pause there and see if you have follow-up questions. Finally, I would note I am an MBA. I'm not a social worker, but we try and bring business principles to this work all the time. Our job as managers is to bring solutions to problems. And the only way you can compellingly tell this story is through data and moving the system. And we've been able to do that here in Western New York and Buffalo.
Just an incredible story and incredible data. I mean, that's hearing that, on my side of the camera, I guess, is it's just so inspirational. I do have a few questions. So the one obvious one that I feel like everybody asks is, did you say that are you paying for each graduate to go to college? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a fundraising machine in place to try and support these students long term. So yes, we're a last dollar scholarship. Every student that graduates the public or charter schools in the city of Buffalo, we will fill their gap after Pell Grants and after TAP Grants, so that they have the opportunity to earn a certificate, a 2-year degree, or a 4-year degree. When we launched this, our estimate was that this would take about $30 million over the first 10 years, which we raised. We are now in a $100 million capital campaign to have an endowment here in perpetuity to fund this, so that Buffalo is known as a city that supports higher ed. So we've raised about 40 million of that to date, Tom, of our $100 million goal.
Okay, so 60 more to go.
60 to go.
All right.
Besides that, I got nothing to worry about.
Easy. Well, maybe somebody listening to this will have a connection. So you talked about sort of the economic return, and you mentioned, obviously I think you said 49 up to 67% graduation rate, which I mean is just mind blowing. Is Say Yes? Is Say Yes the reason for that?
I think you need a lot of conditions. We've got great partners. We've got a strong superintendent in place that put a strategy in place and budgeted towards it. You can't have a working partnership without your organizing entity being strong. Yeah. And we consider ourselves a key strategic partner to the Buffalo Public Schools. Conversely, though, our mayor's been incredible, our county executive, our college president, our foundation leaders, parents. We work together, and I think people want to be a part of something they help build. So we brought everyone to the table from day one. We still meet every 3 weeks behind our strategy to move the needle for students in the Buffalo Public Schools. But the best strategy in the world can't overcome, your central unit not being strong. So I would say we're a part of it, but the credit goes far and wide here in our city.
Yeah, it's awesome. It sounds like you said collective impact, right? You bring in that, and that essentially is bringing in all the stakeholders. And it sounds like that getting everybody at the table and really, really working together, has that impact, which is not unlike any other, major business, but working with with similar goals on the same train tracks.
Yeah, I think, there's intractable problems are intractable for a reason, and nobody can take them on their own. And I think that's why things just sit often. But so, the school district, the city, the county, philanthropy, nobody could have tackled this challenge collectively. Right. And through it, we've been able to reorganize our financial resources to support students as best we can. Even I would point to things like, county government manages a social service department and mental health access. Our strategy has been take those services, and move them out of a central location or a clinic that might be hard to reach and put them right in your public school building where kids and families can go access them. It doesn't cost any more money. It just makes them easier to access. And
Right.
There's a lot of detriments to health and education, right? And if you can start to tackle those in one space, you're more likely to be successful.
Right. Okay, so you took the graduation rate up to 67%.
Mhm.
Did you say the college number of students going to college went from 55 to 65?
So 57 to 65.
So, and that is rising in as the graduation rate is rising too. So it's really, almost an order of magnitude more than before. Am I getting that right?
You're getting it right. Yeah. And to me, that's our biggest opportunity to continue to move the needle. I mean, as a leader of an organization, I always want us to be innovative. We're out of startup phase. We were a startup, and I try and toggle us between growth and maturity. You don't want to fall into organizational decline, but there's so many opportunities out there, and we are really uniquely positioned in the system to help students. So, that 35 to percent or so that aren't taking advantage of a certificate, a 2-year degree, or a 4-year degree. Our kids have real financial need, Tom.
Yeah.
This year we're supporting 2,600 students with scholarships. Half of them have combined family income below $25,000. So ones that aren't accessing higher ed, we know they've got financial needs for their family. So I think, we want to continue to move into the youth employment space, in particular around that percentage that isn't taking advantage of higher ed. And can we quickly help those students get credentialed, even if it's in a semester, or backed with a paid internship while they're doing it, so that they've got a better shot to make a living wage. And that's, at the end of the day, I think that's how we measure success, is everybody wants the same things. Are we able to move the needle on somebody that is coming from a family wage below $25,000 to double that quickly so that they can contribute to our community and access the things we all want? And that's where we want to go, and we'll get there.
So I think is what I'm hearing, and is essentially the measurement isn't college graduates, it's successful people. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And if I was going to measure that, I'm looking at wage attainment a couple of years after higher ed completion. That's one measure of success, right? There's a lot of different measures, and
Yeah.
we employ over 100 people now. We work really hard to be a good employer and meet people where they are. I think that's important. But you can measure success a lot of different ways, what you choose to do for a living. It's not just financial, but the fact is you have to have a certain income to do okay in 2020 in America, right? It is a dollars and cents component to it. So I think our work is clearly critical from a social component, but I think the economic component of it is just as important.
So how old are you as an organization?
We're 8 years old now, Tom.
And were you the sort of founding executive director?
Yes, I was.
So basically, what city was it in before Buffalo? You
It
said
was in
this was,
Syracuse, since expanded to a site in North Carolina and in Cleveland. But Buffalo is the shining star of the work. And I think, don't just take my word. You can look at somebody like Brookings that really pointed out, Buffalo's been a success, and certainly for reasons why Buffalo's been successful.
okay, so you're like the most humble person I know, but so why were you able to bring that success to that organization? I mean, how many people were there when you started?
There were zero, but we had good partners outside of us. And I would say, I think good leadership is important in terms of who you surround yourself with. And, from a nonprofit perspective, we've got a great board. We've put a clear strategy out there. We measure against our strategy, and we understand what we want to do and how we're going to spend our time. I think the other critical part is, serving as a good employer. And we work really hard to be a good employer, Tom. We wanted to pay good salary, have great benefits, great PTO. I want to do a market assessment on that every 2 years so we understand where we are in the market. I want to be able to recruit and retain a strong workforce, and I wanted to reflect our community. We're 68% individuals of color, which is very different than most organizations. But it's not just diversity, it's talent and diversity, and those things are two entirely different components. And then I want SAYS to be a career springboard for people. I want them to take on leadership roles when they leave us. And I would note this is that, just paying a good salary and offering good benefits, that alone doesn't make you a good employer. I think it's understand that you have a clear evaluation process. You're giving people the tools to do the job. You're using modern tools to track the work that you're doing. I think it's important that you've got things like core values and a code of conduct, that you have ongoing education. We call it Say Yes University where we are, and it's everything from interviewing and promotions to supervisor training and coaching and performance management and dealing with difficult people. We want to have an annual survey on culture and climate process that allows for meaningful employee feedback, so that people feel their voice matters. And you can't move on everything, but we like to have a lot of tools in place to be a good employer, listen to voices, and say thank you as much as we can. So, we're not perfect, but we're very intentional on how we spend our time as an employer. And I certainly think that's helped us be more successful as an organization.
Yeah, for sure. So, thank you for sharing that. So the question I have is when you guys started, when you started, like clearly you have a really good culture that you're talking about. Your leadership views are are what they are, and as you lead your team, how much, like, where did that come from when you started? Like, did you learn that beforehand? Like, is it, I mean, how and what has that been like, I guess? Where did you get that?
There's no substitute for experience, right? And I've had my feet in the fire for 8 years in this job, and a pretty difficult job the 4 years before that. So I'm a learner by doing. I think one of the traits that serves me well, though, is I am a listener, and I like to pick up on other people's styles. I'm not afraid to ask questions and then embed that into my own philosophy. And I think it's a good lesson learned is it's okay not to have all the answers, right? And being willing to ask for help or guidance or counsel as you need it, in particular as a young manager. Then other things are, establishing good infrastructure is critical too. Energy gets you so far, but infrastructure matters, right? Having a good finance team
That when
around.
you started, like when you started, like, I got to really focus on the infrastructure and the values and the culture and stuff like that, or was it? Had you learned that in your previous career, or like what? Or yeah.
I mean, I learned it in government. I learned some components of it in government, in particular things around finance and budget, and I had an MBA, so I had a good understanding of that. I mean, HR came later as a really effective tool to manage a growing organization. If you want to keep a nimble, flexible organization, that's a good thing. But as you have more people, you need rules, right? And bringing in an HR director that was going to lead a proactive agenda is something that was really important to us.
Yeah.
So I think you have to know the point in time. So if you're an entrepreneur, your infrastructure is, you're relying on that energy for the first few years, right?
Yep.
But as you grow, I think the importance of good infrastructure is critical. And that allows everybody to be better, right? So I really, from my perspective, leading a nonprofit, there's 5 things I would look at, and that's finance, HR, IT, governance, and communications. Those are 5 critical components of infrastructure that we need in place. And I would say almost even a for-profit model is very similar, except you could sub out your board for your shareholders, right? Mm-hmm. Or your investors. But yeah, if you can take the time to get that right, I think it makes your job a lot easier as an organization, and I think your team appreciates it too.
And do you feel like your career before Say Yes, how much did that sort of contribute to maybe the success that you're having?
It absolutely did. I think I've had a lot of formative experiences in my life, many of them professional, that drove a desire to do this work. It made me better at this work, introduced me to people that I respected that were leading the charge, and it introduced me to need in a significant way. So yeah, I certainly would not be here without the professional experiences I've had along the way. It's been formative, many steps of the way. And in fact, I would point back to, the juvenile detention facility I'd mentioned before. Those were not bad kids at all. And they had a lot of potential. And, those kids had hopes and dreams, and they wanted to go on and earn a higher education degree and have a good life. And they wanted many of the same things you and I do. And I think something like Say Yes with extended learning time opportunities after school and on Saturdays, things like that give students a safe place to be and experiences they can get that they may otherwise have not had. And that will be a difference for those students. And something like that was very formative, understanding, that these kids wanted the same things as other kids. They just didn't have the opportunity. So we're not a silver bullet, but we're working to systemically provide all these opportunities for kids so that they can contribute to our community. I think we've left a lot of talent on the sidelines for decades in Buffalo. We want to bring that talent home because everyone needs to contribute to this resurgence that we've had.
Yeah. So one last question. I know you have to run. So we're both sitting at home basically because of this whole COVID-19, and how is that affecting Say Yes and in general?
So we've had a pretty robust response to it. We are working remotely when we can, but we have caseworkers who are deemed essential that are in homes every single day working with families on child welfare needs. They are deemed as essential as doctors and nurses. And in some cases, they're the only line of defense for children. So I have a lot of respect for that work.
Yeah.
We're bringing basic needs and food directly to families every day during the week for those that aren't able to access it from other places. So we've had a clear role in it. We're trying to support our public school district who's taken the lead around things like meals, but we certainly play a complementary role in that. That's one form of impact. Then I look at our scholars, and that's my next call. We have 2,600 students. About a third of them don't have access to technology to take their online courses, right? So trying to get laptops and internet in the hands of our students quickly is a challenge. So with every challenge, there's opportunity. Some good will come of this. We'll look at our organization and maybe we can someday support a laptop for every one of our students as they head off to a higher ed program. So, when all this is over, we've got a short-term agenda right now. We're building our long-term agenda, and we'll be a better organization because of it. But my team's doing incredible work right now to support kids and families in Buffalo through some tough times.
Yeah. Well, Dave, thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for being here, for all that you're doing with Say Yes, for Buffalo, for the world, really. Yeah, we appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
You're the best.
Thanks for
I love
having me
you.
on. Let us tell our story. Yeah, love you too, man.